Well, hi there, everybody. I'm Chase Raz, and this is the Chase Raz Show. I am bringing on Rodrigo A to Z right now. Rodrigo, hey, buddy, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing really good. I'm really excited to give this a start and everything, and just see where it takes us.
See
Yeah.
where it takes us. I mentioned the other day on Twitter that you are definitely one of the future, you're current influencer, but well, no, you know what? We don't like that word around here, do we? You're one of the current content creators and educators in the space of crypto and blockchain with Zilliqa, with Strong, with various other things. And I said, you are a person to watch. So I thank you for joining me today. For anybody who watches live or after the fact, this this is going to seem like it's a show that shouldn't exist. And Rodrigo, we should explain why. We're in the process of testing out this live stream format, and we're not quite ready to go. We had plans to launch in Q2, but when we've set our meetings, we're doing our regular meetings, we're going through essentially dress rehearsal, but
Yeah.
all of the stuff going on with the world, with Russia and Ukraine war, with Zilliqa right now, our home. I like to say Zilliqa is my crypto home planet. With Zilliqa being the way it is and going, what's going on there, we thought, what the hell, right? We don't have all the assets, we don't have all the sound bumpers. Let's just turn the live stream on and see how things go. So if
Absolutely. And I think,
anybody's, yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
sorry. I just thought that's exactly how it kind of works for what the envision is for the Chase Raz show, really. It's about a bit of transparency, a bit of realism, bit of, talking about everything, sometimes crypto, sometimes not crypto, and just how your everyday, I guess, crypto investor, if you want to call it in that sense, or influencer, not the word that we want to use, but influencer, let's say, lives and everything. So, yeah, really excited to be here.
Yeah, we're not sure that we like the term influencer around here, if you can tell. And I think that's an important part, right? So people may know you from your work on social media within the crypto space. They may know me from the Zilliqa Observer. And just to be clear, right, I think some folks have heard me talking about, well, TTO is now a network. It's not just a channel. And this is one of the realities of that the show is more um lifestyle focused. We have crypto, we have general commentary, basically all of the stuff that we in crypto want from our news and our podcasts and our media sources that frankly I don't know, Rodrigo, I don't think we're getting a lot of it. I think we're getting a lot of people trying to be famous and they say a
Yeah.
lot of things that we like, but they're not really talking about the substantive stuff that matters to us. So hopefully we can address some of that.
Yeah, I
Um
agree. So
yeah.
it just that's the it's realistically why I'm kind of a bit cautious about the word influencer, because realistically, some influencers they ride the wave. They figure out the buzzwords. They figure out what kind of makes the people tick and want to have
Yeah.
like what people hear. But that's not, I think, what we both really want to do. We want to make sure that people are educated, people are protected, know what they're doing, and set the real foundations of quote unquote success in the crypto space, let's say, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's realistically why I'm so awkward about the word influencer, because it's not the obviously the real term, the real actual definition of it is okay, but obviously I feel like
Yeah.
there's a new subclass, let's say, of stereotypical influencer that we find.
I'm with you there. Like, I don't mind the word by the definition, but when anybody has ever called me an influencer, they weren't being kind, right? Let me just put it that way. So I think in that sense, we're not trying to be influencers of, buy this product, buy that product. But we do have quite a lot to talk about. And remember, this is a soft launch of this. This was going to be Rodrigo and I sitting around for an hour doing this, talking about the topics, just making sure that we get the production values right, but they're not there yet. So
Yeah.
the reason we're going live today as a part of a test earlier than normal is one there. Right, I mentioned there's a lot going on in the world, but one of the things is Zilliqa itself, a blockchain that I got my start with, you got your start with in terms of content creation. I think we are both on other chains prior, but it looks like Zilliqa's house is burning down and they're imploding and this that, and the other. Now, look, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic there. They're definitely cleaning houses, though, since Ben Lipschitz has come in as CEO. And Rodrigo, what are you seeing on your end? Because I'm just seeing a complete house cleaning. a little bit of airing of some dirty laundry. And that's sort of my view right now. What's yours?
Yeah, in a way, it's kind of similar. It's quite surprising and shocking in a sense that what we see from the day-to-day basis. Just today I just realized that even another member just left. So I guess you can call it in a way um, cleaning house, but I am just more curious of what's the game plan now. Obviously, there's been a few comments about a roadmap. What's a roadmap in that sense, and whether they're beyond it in that sense, right? And as well
Yeah,
as just we've gone from in the sense of what Zilliqa was, the scalability, the shardability, and all this potential DeFi mechanism to, I feel like we're shifting more into this Metapolis space. So just from this,
definitely.
yeah, just from a year, I've personally been investing in Zilliqa since beginning of 2021, and it's been one hell of a ride. It's been at one point, my greatest scenario and everything. So I don't know what to expect. In that sense, it's kind of we just have our hands in the air. We got to see what happens, who comes in, what's their potential plans, what they provide to the community, and at the minute, I don't know. It looks a bit shaky. I'd like to say.
It does, and I want to call out for anybody who hasn't seen it. Blockchain Andy, who's just one of the real OGs in the Zilliqa space. He created this video and put it out. This is about 2 days old now. Zilliqa removes founders. And if you aren't following Blockchain Andy, not a plug for him. It's really good content out. And he put a little bit of his opinion in here. He put quite a lot of fact of what's going on.
Hmm.
But even more than what he said in this video, and I'm going to speak to it as if everybody's seen it, and we haven't. That's fine. Um, but there's been this slow churn, right? There's been this change since Ben came in. That first Colin was out of the door, and I think I'll go back to just the view of us here for a moment because Rodrigo, I think I could provide some insight on here. When I talked to Colin after he left, of course I'm going to keep that conversation private, but then I spoke to other people surrounding that situation as well. The information that I got generally. Um, Let me just put it this way. Colin was really good at saying, I'm not going to say anything, right? He didn't stonewall me necessarily, but he's like, look, I've got an NDA. I'm a professional. You know this. We've talked behind the scenes. I'm not going to say anything. But, right. But other people did mention some things to me. And I generally got the idea that whether he was pushed out or whether he left on his own accord or whether it was a combination of both, like we see happening now
Hmm.
with multiple people being asked to leave or they'll be removed, whatever that was with Colin around the turn of the year, is I got some information that he basically heard the plan for going forward, kind of thought it was bullshit, and went along with the plan of, yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I will go ahead and leave. Again, he wouldn't confirm that for me, right? And I don't want to make it sound like that's the authoritative truth, but that's sort of what the inside story was talking about. But at the same time, what's funny is other employees of Zilliqa came to me and they're like, I've heard Ben's plan and I'm so down for it that it was basically ride or die. Like
Hmm.
everything that's going to be in Zill is in Zill, and they're not going to sell it, and damn it, it's going to have to go to zero for them to get rid of it. And it seemed kind of weird to me, but then these departures just kept coming. I mean, Han Wen um, left, and he recently said that the board, right? We're hearing this term for the first time, aren't we? We normally talk about Zil Core. Then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, the board comes up, and this is from what a lot of us here in the states call Anquan. I believe it's Anquan, like the Chinese pronunciation of it. But I'm going to call it Anquan because I'm an American English. But are we talking about Max? Is that the board? Is Max and his crew? Are those the folks that are being spoken out against, or what's your impression there?
Yeah, so in similar sense, obviously we've seen not just Han Wen, but also Jul Hall, Hao Tan, right? Kind of state that the board's kind of to me, and just looking in, it looks like they're being bullies in a way, right? They're just kind of deciding this is the final word, this is what's happening. They're, and the really strong words that he said himself is that it's no longer an enjoyable workplace. So
And that was Chun Hao Tan.
Yeah, Junhal
Yeah,
Tan,
let me
exactly.
I
Yeah,
think I can put that one up on screen because I believe we have it here. So let's go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, this tweet is the one you were talking
right.
about where he's like, "Guys, I'm out." Right? Like it's
In
basically
that
complaining
sense,
that
yeah, that was I'd say the more quieter, toned down version of it. He just kind of just said he's out, and then obviously went on in a tangent through the thread, isn't it?
yeah, that's where it was they asked me to leave or be terminated.
Yeah, that's right.
Um I think at this one I understand the frustration. But the question I have is exactly how unfair is this board that we've really never heard about before?
Mm,
No one's talked a lot about a board. How unfair are they being? Because if I'm being perfectly honest, there was a conversation I had with other business professionals who are in the Zilliqa space, let's say Q3 of last year, Q3 of 2021, and every
mm,
single one of us agreed that most, maybe not all, but most of the names of who has left or exited at this point, Colin, Hanwin, Amrit, Chun Hao Tan, Milan, almost every single one of those names in a private conversation of business professionals was they would have like if we were to take over, right? That hypothetical question that they'd either have to be repositioned or moved out of the company. I think what's making more news is the way that it's being done
yeah,
is not the standard. It's not an insult to move somebody out of even their own company when you come in, right? It's not an insult to do that. You shake somebody's hand, you say, "Thank you for what you've done. I need to take the company in this particular direction now. And here's what I need." And then what you do is you throw this big celebration for the founders and the developers and all the people who are leaving, and you honor them and you create these press releases and you put them out. But that's not what was done here. It seems
no,
like several of them were swept under the rug. Um, as Chun Hao Tan has pointed out, being asked not to talk about it. I honestly believe we only got the press release from Ben because I and other people called out and said, like, we're not dumb. We can see Emmert's gone.
yeah.
like, you know,
It's been
I'm
out for
going
a
to put,
while, hasn't it? If anything.
right. Like I found when I went into this, I had to prove it because I had told people like, and I'm not trying to be some oracle here, right? This isn't about being some influencer or being right. It's just what do we bring to this space?
Mm,
And being able to look and see, I found a message from a month prior that I had said, I think Amhert's in a lame duck period, right? We're just waiting on the announcement. I'm going to put the messages up here for just a moment. Looks like we have one. Let me just, instead of the chat, do this. How do you think any of this relates to the Metapolis updates? Rodrigo, what about you? What do you think that these departures, all the way back to Colin, but as recent as Chunhao, as recent as Milan, as recent as Amrit,
yeah, I think that's
Corn,
a great question, to be honest, because that's actually one of the very first things I thought about. Because at the end of the day, obviously, I've spoken just briefly before, what we thought, what Zilliqa was, what they were building towards, the hype between the Zilliqa bridge, the interoperability with the Ethereum bridge and everything, trying to get more assets and just DeFi opportunities overall, as well as making blockchain easier to understand for the the new user, for your everyday person, right? If anything, from what I remember, that was one of Amit's main goals.
yeah,
To me, this
mainstream
clearinghouse.
adoption.
Exactly. Yeah. This clearinghouse just kind of seems as these old heads, as per se, I think, as what they're kind of considering is not going to make a cut or be good enough for what we want Metapolis to be.
Yeah,
It seems like they're trying to attract this entire new metaverse, right? Obviously, as we can see for the links with Meta, also known as Facebook, back, not too long ago. This just seems like an entirely completely different shift in the direction of this is our focus. We can't have these people just doing work on that anymore. We need new, chief officers in that sense.
yeah. But when you say that, it makes me think of a larger issue. When we've seen a couple of, I'm looking for them actively right now.
Yeah,
We have seen a few tweets
yeah, that
from
one as well.
founders, former developers, former co-founders that have essentially gone so far, and I don't know if I have them up directly right now, but have gone so far as to say, look, I wouldn't be surprised if Zil mainnet goes down at some point in the future, and because they really only have one core developer that's familiar with it left, to my knowledge, that they wouldn't be able to get mainnet back up. When we're seeing messages like that from former lead developers, from former co-founders, and the talk within the community seems to be similar to that as well, it makes me wonder, right? Like, you know who has the core competencies when you come in, when you do an executive review of everything. It
Hmm.
makes me wonder, is Zilliqa leaving the blockchain space? Like, I really wonder that. Is Zilliqa coming in and saying, you know what, we're going to be a metaverse company and we have the blockchain, and maybe we'll use a blockchain, maybe we'll even adopt another blockchain in the future. But it makes me wonder, because there's still no Zilliqa wallet. There's still no Zilliqa core DeFi. There's still, right, they've built the blockchain, and most of the developers, especially a lot of the ones we're seeing leave, were moonlighting, doing various different things.
Yeah.
But nowhere in here do I see an emphasis on the blockchain. I see metaverse, 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 NFT, NFT, and then, in metaverse, crossovers with gamers, which we can talk about, I guess, in a little bit.
Yeah,
What do you think
precisely.
about that? I mean, is Zilliqa going to remain in the blockchain game?
Well, genuinely, it just does seem, as you've kind of worded out quite clearly there. It's their whole shift is going towards this metaverse company, right? And in that sense, obviously, as we know for the drama and everything that's happening for the Zilliqa bridge, that came out quite late. Not quite late, very late in the sense, right? As people
Yeah,
expected,
we
right?
were being polite. It
Yeah,
was late, and some of the people who have left, and some of the people who haven't left. I'm not going to go dox all of our conversations.
yeah,
It was frustration. I'm like, I don't know who's doing what. I don't know. I mean, I would be told on a weekly basis, like, I don't know what the holdup is. Like, I don't
yeah.
even know where this is. Yeah.
Well,
So
that's what I
it was
mean.
very late.
Exactly. So it's very late. It just seems that obviously they're trying to find a new niche, something they can chase towards. Obviously, there's so many blockchains out. Nowadays there's Avalanche, there's Phantom, there's Ethereum, there's every. I can list goes on and on. It's difficult to kind of find innovation in that space. So I think what Zilliqa is trying to do is to find innovation in a completely different space, still crypto, but something that maybe they can put their expertise better in better, and obviously in the benefit of the community potentially. Obviously, short term, we don't know what's happening. We'll see, but maybe they're looking for this long term push for the metaverse, and expect some type of, let's say, traction from it.
Right,
So
right. It's so
yeah,
easy to sound negative and to get, and I think this happens on social media a lot. Even folks who have, we've been in the space for a very long time. We've created media around Zilliqa itself in the past. And it's almost like, okay, well, now you've joined the fudders, right? It's almost like you get that type of message of, oh, you've joined them. You finally went to the dark side. But it's not about going to the dark side. It's about really calling it as you see it and offering some information of, hey, here's what's going on. Hi, BCA, by the way, blockchain Andy. Andy, I was just talking about your video earlier. Let me put it up on screen. I'm going to interrupt my thought for a moment.
yeah,
This one right here. I was suggesting that people need to go check this out. I said you have a lot of fact in there, a lot of good stuff, and you put some of your opinions in, which people ask you all the time, what do you think is going on? And I like how you put some of that opinion in there. You said at the end, and now you know, right? For those of you who have been asking my opinion, Andy, you said now you know. And I think that's great. I encourage anybody who hasn't seen this video to go and take a look at it. Just search for Blockchain Andy on YouTube. Look for Zilliqa Removes Founders. Andy, if you want to in the chat, what Rodrigo and I were just talking about is, I'm curious, is Zilliqa going to abandon the blockchain in
mm,
general for just the metaverse, right? Do they need to maintain their own blockchain in the future? Is this something, first of all, it sounds ridiculous. It sounds preposterous. Um, it sounds right. It does sound like fudding, as Andy's kind of saying in the chat. But I don't bring it from a fudding point of view. It's if
yeah,
you go in as a part of a new executive team and you're making the cuts that we've seen. Let me recap them again: Colin, Han Win, Amrit, Junhao Tan, Milan. If you're making these cuts and positioning people out, you almost have to ask, are we going full steam ahead in metaverse only, and we can identify new blockchain solutions or something like that? But yeah, Andy, thanks for coming in and saying hi. I don't think Zilliqa is going to do that. The main
mm,
point, the difference between being a fudder and saying, "Oh, Zilliq is going to shit, and they're doing everything wrong, and this, that, and the other." And one of the reasons I want to put this back in video, even in a soft launch of this show, is I'm not trying to do that. And I don't think most people are trying to do that. The thing is, there are so many business professionals in the Zilliqa space. That's what I've learned. There are so many of us who have just the number of you who I meet who have crazy professional backgrounds, just run circles around anything I could ever imagine doing. And we have this sense of best practices aren't being followed, right? There was never that handshake and congratulations to the people you're politely pushing out the door. It was very clear that it was, we're politely pushing you out the door, but shut up about it and here's a little shove. That, I think, is the bigger issue of what has people
Yeah.
going, is my investment safe? That's the point I think that's
Well, that's
plus
the
people
thing.
people
We're
have a lot
talking
of fear.
about, yeah, it's just, this was a blockchain, not too long ago that was $1 billion asset in the sense. And, it's not play money. This is a lot of people's money, and we got to figure out what is going on. And I think obviously, yeah, to an extent, it might be a bit too obscene to say that, Zilliqa, the blockchain itself, might disappear, right? Maybe they do just intertwine, but not do nearly as much maintenance compared to how it was before for the metaverse, because how the transactions happen, etc. In the metaverse with NFTs, so on and so forth. But the issue that I've got with Zilliqa is that it just, obviously, first off, you can't, in my opinion, in the ethical sense point, you can't just do that to these co-founders, to these people that's worked day and night to try and find the success of a project. And at the end of the day, I think the thing that concerns me the most is actually the cutoff of conversation or contact with community members. I think one very much astounding one, in my opinion, is with XCAD. I don't know if that's something you want to talk about yourself,
Yeah,
but
well, first, let me interject something here. I'm giving you the big
yeah,
nod. I'm giving you the big agreement, but I actually do
absolutely.
disagree, right? This is 100% something you can do to found. Like when you come in and are tasked with revitalizing the company and taking it in a new, none of this surprises me. The part that surprises me, and it feels weird in a sense that I have to leave the crypto world for a moment and put back my real hats that
Mhm,
I wear
mhm.
on, which are many because I'm bald and I need them. Um, the for those who may not get that, like bald people have to wear hats all the time. So, but when I put my real world hat back on for a moment, it's like, but this isn't the way you do it. This is exactly what you do. It doesn't
Mm,
surprise me that Amrit Kumar was shown the door. What surprises me is that it was done in a way that just deflated the work he's done and let the fudders come in and just chew him up alive and let people completely incorrectly point their fingers at him and say, "Well, you're the problem for this. You were the problem for that. You were the problem for that." Did he make mistakes? Everybody makes mistakes. Did he make more than the average person? I'll leave that to somebody else to decide, and not me. I'm not the judge of that. But this isn't the way Zilliqa has done it is not the way that a new executive team comes in and releases the old guard. That's a common ass thing to do. This
yeah,
isn't the way to do it. And I don't know if all crypto folks, because there are a lot of crypto folks from all walks of life, right? Not everybody comes from the business backgrounds that I mentioned before. And so they may not have seen this before. And it looks really disrespectful because yeah, this is a common thing to do and it hurts everybody when it happens. And that's why we have best practices for it that soften it, make it a little bit more humane, and thank people for what they have done rather than pushing them out and letting the wolves eat them up on what they didn't do. So, yeah, no, but to your point about XCAD, there was that very public. Um, I don't even know how it ultimately got resolved. We're gonna have to
mm,
ask Ollie one of these days because I know Amrit stepped in. I know Ollie and Max are close, but if Max and the board are behind a lot of this, where's the right? My question
yeah,
becomes, where's the support for XCAD? And let me put some more business sense out there. A Zilliqa that is not doing everything to support XCAD right now is a dumb Zilliqa. That's just
agreed,
like
agreed.
what
Yeah,
the, what are you doing, right? Like, fine, even if you're completely pivoting to the metaverse, okay, but you've got what is going to be a multi-million dollar revenue source staring you in the face. You don't ignore. And I got screenshots sent to me by both parties. Yeah, XCAD was being ignored completely. Um, so yeah, what are your thoughts on I know that's the main part for you. I think
Well,
that
yeah,
gets you about all this.
in that sense, I appreciate what you mentioned about in the sense of people being pushed out the door. That does naturally happen in the business, especially when you need to make drastic or different moves. In the sense, obviously, the move that we're talking about here is the Metapolis metaverse play that they're kind of doing in this sense, right? And that makes sense. It's obviously
Yeah.
just it simply seems, but throughout the whole process, that the employees were just completely not treated correctly, obviously, and I think that's very quite easily seen through tweets from Jun Hao Tan, or even I think there was someone else that you found, but we weren't able to confirm who that
Edison,
was.
and I did get it. Edison's from before my time, and he had moved on to work with I'm going to say Anquan. I know it's not pronounced that way. It's Anquan, the
Uncoin,
Chinese
yeah,
pronunciation. Andy, if you're still around, I know you say Anquan. Like we all try, right? Those of us who do not speak Chinese, we all try our best way to figure out how the hell to properly pronounce that. But I think it was this one, right? Is this the one you're
yeah,
looking for?
that's right, Edison, that's correct. So the point with that is just to me, maybe not to other people, that just seems a bit um not, let's say, in the flutter style, a bit bearish, right? In that sense of how we see it, right? It just doesn't seem that they're sticking with the original Zilliqa core values that we grown to love in that sense, right? It's become a very centralized situation,
Yeah.
where the community doesn't get a say, doesn't get to do what they think could be beneficial for the community. So losing XCAD, if that were to happen, I don't know where that stands for Zilliqa. As you rightfully said, you literally have a multi-million-dollar asset
Yeah.
revenue stream staring you down the face, and what are you doing? You're completely ignoring them. You're cutting all ties, everything that was already set down in a really solid foundation, and it's been quite easily said from Ollie. There's no hiding around it. So, for me, in that sense, is the Metapolis play worth losing something like XCAT?
Oh, that's a tough one, right? Like I don't want to be the bear in the room, right?
Yeah.
And before I talk about emerging technologies and trend spotting, which is something I've taught in my class for a decade. I'm not currently teaching it, but reaching back a decade. Rodrigo, I want to ask you, with your background and from a law point of view,
Mm.
right? Is XCAD differentiated in any way? Because if we talk about, Andy, who was here a moment ago with Okimoto, if we talk about, JG Whitley with Package Portal and Gabe over there with JG, those types of companies, those types of smart contracts, those types of projects, depending on what they are,
Yeah.
right? They're using a publicly available blockchain. If the blockchain stops working or doesn't support a feature anymore that they need or this out or the other, that's really kind of like, you know what? Well, we've moved in a different direction. You have to respond, either update your smart contracts or go somewhere else. But with XCAD and UFF Sports as well,
Mm.
we don't know the nature of the contracts behind the scenes, but they were customers, they were clients of Zilliqa, and so there could be some other angles here that XCAD and UFF Sports are considering it, at least depending on what the nature of that contract is, right?
Well, yeah, I agree. Obviously, in that sense, this is quite a technical scenario, in my opinion, which might be a bit over my head to explain at the current state. But in that sense, if we were to say, in how you said, in the unlikely scenario that the blockchain disappears, what does that do to the rest of the market, especially as you said, their clients, they are customers that's most likely signed a contract potentially
Right.
with Zilliqa. If they didn't, in that sense, then where does that leave, you know, these projects in the law side of things? What can they do? What is the potential ramifications for Zilliqa or for the other party, right? And this is where I guess a lot of people don't know what's happening yet, especially in the law, because the law does not know how to compute with crypto whatsoever. You can see that simply with the completely divided opinions with crypto tax, and obviously that's not something that I can
Right.
advise on or whatsoever. But it just in that sense, there's so if we're talking about crypto, that's we don't know. It's still kind of in development and takes plenty of years to even get any type of bills signed into each jurisdiction. Obviously, in the UK, it's different than the US, right? But with that sense, if it is a more traditional business standpoint, it comes down from basic contract law, and
Right.
with the client and the, sorry, I've messed up the other word, but the other party,
Well, it makes me wonder, like, what is in those contracts? Were there timelines? Were there,
And are there
Zilliqa's
contracts is another question. Is
But
there
that,
contracts?
that here I'm making this a priori assumption that they are clients, so there's some type of contract.
Yeah,
I don't know that to be the case. I don't know that to be true because when I did some business with Zilliqa in the past, we didn't do contracts.
exactly.
To my recollection, there wasn't um, a paper signed. So look,
I mean, simply anyone can make a ZRC 220 token at the end of the day. It's obviously, in order to make it into a completely different ecosystem, that's something else. But obviously,
right, and we'll talk to Adam and Carbon Labs about that at some point, and
absolutely,
that,
yeah.
I mean, that has ramifications over in projects like that of, with graphene. Are you really going to stay in L2, or are you going to become an L1, or what are you going to do
Mhm.
there? But for anybody tuning in, just to get some information, this is a soft launch, a pilot of the Chase Raz Show. We're not done with our production. Rodrigo and I have been meeting for a couple of weeks,
Yeah,
testing times, testing topics, making sure there's plenty to inform people about. And today we just decided, you know what? Even though it's not Q2 and we're not ready to go with this by any stretch, I think people would want to hear the topics going on today. And I think people are looking for more information. So we've been talking so far about Zilliqa and the continued march towards Metapolis and the metaverse. We've also talked a little bit about some of the departures, but we haven't talked about the fact that new people are coming in. There's of course Ben came in as the impetus for a lot of this shakeup.
yeah.
Sandra has been in there and is really the voice. I think people look at Sandra, who's the NFT and metaverse lead at Zilliqa. They look at her as the voice of Zilliqa now, especially since Ben is so quiet. And they recently announced three new hires. One is a 3D designer, the other is a graphic designer, and the other is a creative director, which happens to be Nora. I know I've worked with Nora in the past with Cherkia. Other people who have butted up against Zilliqa in the past, butted up, and not in a head-butting way, but in a worked with them in any way, may have worked with Nora in the past as well. So I don't know if these new, I'll just put it this way, Rodrigo, I don't know if these new hires signal anything to me in particular, right? One graphic designer, one creative director, and one 3D. Right.
Specialist,
When
yeah.
you're going down the metaverse path, I would imagine you'd already have a team of 3D developers. And if not, I have a whole host of new questions to ask.
I think I'm in the same boat. It
Right,
just
well,
kind of,
you still have about 50 people working there. What the hell are they doing if you're going full Metapolis? One person knows the blockchain. You're like Andy had pointed out before in a comment below. Most of the social team's gone. Like, what are you doing?
hands in the air. Like, I genuinely, it's anyone's guess at this point.
But isn't that the same question we had with Amrit at some points? We would ask him that, like, what are you guys doing? We
Yeah.
would ask that before. I don't know. Is it starting to materialize? But again, a creative director, a graphic designer, and a three. It's like if you don't already have all of that, I don't
But in
I
that
don't know
sense,
what's
obviously,
going
we
on.
are, yeah. In that sense, obviously, they made three new hires. It could be potentially they're just simply adding it to the team and the workload because simply there's just too much to be done, and they just need to add on to the team, make it stronger. In the sense of trying to speed up the development. So it could, obviously, this is all in the sense speculation of what we're expecting, but I would not be surprised if this is just the beginning of making this graphics designer, creative director, or 3D specialist team per se. But I
Andy, if
think,
we
yeah,
were, I'm going to say something to Andy here. If we were already in the live launch, I would have already sent you a link, like, come on the show. We're just not there, and it's really hard for me to do that, like in the middle of a thing. And we are going to cover some other topics. So, Andy, if you're wondering, like, why I just don't toss you a link to come on the show, we probably would have already if we were in our regular launch cycle. Um, but that is so you're giving me some information here because I haven't met with Sandra, and I'm going to put two things up on screen for Rodrigo and I to mull over in real time here. The first is the metaverse isn't built by Zilliqa, they're third party, right? I think we all knew that part already,
yeah,
but it is a good reminder here. And then that feeds up to something you're saying that I did not know. Again, because I haven't set a meeting with Sandra yet. She's given me her calendar. to do so, but I don't have it set yet. She said, or you said they charge 40 to 80,000 for the domes, and they build it for you. That's my concern, right? That we're no longer a blockchain company, that it's a metaverse company, and the metaverse is third party and not open source, that it is very controlled and corporate, as you mentioned.
Extremely centralized, realistically, which is quite controversial for a blockchain, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, this really, again, I don't think that Zilliqa is trying to say, hey, we're leaving the blockchain, but it almost seems like they're doing what Anquan and Achilles have done in the past and say, well, we might use Zilliqa, we might use our own private blockchain. The blockchain part's really not all that relevant. It's the fact that we're using a blockchain, and so people will buy into it. At least that's what is being, whether they know it or not, right? This is one of the points of they're not following proper communication procedures. I'm sure Andy is probably shaking his head as I say that, like another media guy. They have no idea how media works. But again, that sounds like funny, but I don't mean it that way. It's just that the signals that they are putting out there is very much that what we can expect as Zilliqans, for those of us who are, or any casual investors, is that Zilliqa really isn't focusing on the blockchain anymore. They are a company that has a blockchain that began as a sharded blockchain, the first sharded blockchain. But the future seems to be let's go into a non-immersive, non-VR, but 3D, still 3D, metaverse. Let's call it Metapolis. And we don't have other announcements, right? We don't know if it integrates with the metaverse from Meta at all. There are some hints at that beyond the social media stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not reading into that. One of my former students is a social media person over at Meta. That conversation hasn't happened yet, but the initial indication I get is like it's just social media stuff. But yeah, that's a very interesting thing. Rodrigo, what do you think about that? $40,000 to $80,000 for a dome, like,
I mean,
killing innovation there, killing startup projects.
Yeah, I don't know. Personally, I just think it's just for the investors, for people that's been into Zilliqa prior to this, it's just a complete mind-boggling situation where, like, and I don't mean to be drastic or fun in that sense. It's just, what am I invested into now? We need a clearer picture, right? Like, kind of like you said. So there's 80,000 being spent on a dome rather than what we expected to when we first got into it. So personally, it leaves me really dumbfounded, to be honest. And I think it's more mainly because of the lack of communication. It's just, I could be completely on board and happy with it, but we just don't know. So
I think from an investment point of view, what are you investing into that? If you're going that corporate, that's fine.
Yeah.
But you're not a blockchain company anymore, and you really don't need average investors holding your token, and so it's fine if it drops back to absolutely nothing. That's where we need the communication. People's money is still on the line, and right, one thing we can, people can say whatever they want about Amrit, but one thing he did attempt to do is and Colin really, I know, did this, was attempt to protect people's investments. I don't know who did it more so, but I know from conversation, Colin really especially tried to protect people's investments. If that's going to be the case and it's going to go to metaverse, I'm not saying that people wouldn't want to invest in that, right? That is a very valid thing. I think from an emerging technology point of view, I have my disagreement and differences with it that we can talk about at another time or maybe a little bit later. But it's more about the communication at this point. We need to know what you're doing. To make
but
those.
all sense of that, realistically,
you don't have to send it to me. You don't have to send it to Rodrigo. You send it to Andy. You can send it to whoever else is in the space. You can just put it out as a PR. But Rodrigo, before you go on the point you were just about to make, here's what I'm gonna dig into. And I know when I first came into this space, when I talked about Zilpay, I know I ruffled some feathers. That was one of my first videos was talking about Zilpay and how it looked unprofessional and they needed a new website. And I know it pissed Renat off, but we got changes out of that. And I'm going to put this out there. The new announcement from a couple days ago in the Zilliqa space, multi-year partnership here with Overactive Media. Look, I've been clamoring. Get us some PRs, get them press releases, get us some PR. And great, we have one. But it's like the professor in me wants to come out and go, oh no. It's at overactive-media-group.presley.com. So we have a Presley site running the PR. Looks I'm just going to stop talking there. Right? Like,
I
what,
think
what?
this is just the mic drop moment where you just don't
This
really have to
this
say
is where
anything.
it's like, okay, yes, technically you gave us a press release. You know, cheers. Now let's talk about what a press release is, what it should look like, how it should be hosted, what the optics are that surround it. I'm not trying to be a perfectionist, but this is basic business shit at this point.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm
look,
hoping you've got an example here so you can just show it to the people just how ludicrous this
well, this is
actually
a
is.
soft launch, but now I should go grab a sample. Like, it's not that. I mean,
Yeah. No, of
I'm
course.
not going to sit here and grade it and go through it, but I think the first thing that got me was that like, why am I on a Presley site? Why am I like that? That's what threw me at first. Which fine, right? People make this is an overactive media choice. This is what they do, and they've got a couple of esports teams, and I'm all for that. But notice that this is a communication from the partner, not from Zilliqa. So I really didn't get what we were trying to. We didn't get the communication. All right, I don't want to just sit here and bash them. Right, I'm not down on the metaverse. I'm not down on any of that. I think they're doing quite a lot of work. It's just investors are scared at the moment because they're not quite sure what they're going to be getting. They're not quite sure the direction Zilliqa is taking. And when you have, people like me able to formulate a serious question of, are you even bothering with a blockchain anymore?
Mm.
Um, I think that makes people want to run for the hills. Right?
I
And we're
think it's a
looking
very bold
for,
move. Very bold.
yeah,
Yeah. It just simply, come just looking through. If you were an investor and just seeing all this stuff happening, you just simply expect this. Okay, this is this Metapolis thing. It's just a final trump card. You're just hoping it works and that you get the traction that you're expecting from it, and we go from there. But like you said, throwing all this kind of focus from the blockchain to just Metapolis, it's just I don't know. It absolutely requires better communication. And like you
yeah.
said, I think rightfully, we shouldn't. I don't want to be just bashing it or whatever else, and just make it sound like I'm completely against it or whatever else. I could be for it, and I just need to know more. And I think everyone wants to know more, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and is it a corporate solution, right? Are we going
Yeah.
corporate at that point? Which Andy has been mentioning in the chat that it seems to be going that way. But when you talk about domes in a metaverse from a blockchain, right? Like if we think of Decentraland, or we think of any of the other the real metaverses that are out there in the blockchain space, even if we get off of the blockchain and we think about Second Life, which I mean, 12 years ago, I dug into deep for education purposes. When
Hmm.
we think about those, Rodrigo, you and I should easily be able to set something up in one of these spaces. Blockchain Andy, we should all kind of have our own home in the space, especially since we're Zilliqans at the core. But when you start talking about $40,000, $80,000, you get to that point of, okay, well, after development, after all this, after implementing everything, it's like, am I going to do that, or am I going to take that same, ultimately by the end of it, $80 to $100,000 or more? Am I going to go and build an actual studio? Right? Like,
Exactly.
what are the
I'm like, who
PPE?
has 80,000 just to build on something virtual
Yeah,
in that
I,
sense,
I
right?
mean, is Package Portal or XCAT, are they going to be? It doesn't seem like they're the target market. It doesn't seem like DeFi is the target market. It doesn't seem. It seems like they're creating a corporate product
Hmm.
that has nothing to do with what any of us initially invested in. And I think the bottom line point is, okay, but if that's the case, you need to put that out there so we can make the decision. Are we investing in what you're going in, or do we move our assets over to Terra Luna, Kronos, Avalanche, FTM, the other places that are building on the promise that I think we were originally getting with Zilliqa, you know,
Yeah.
even Elrond or Multivac for that point.
There's just so many different blockchains that, in the sense of, obviously what Zilliqa was, it was in a sense carbon neutral friendly, which is something that Algorand is fairly openly talking about all the time in that sense, and they've got their own ecosystem going through, and it's building and growing day by day. So if it's just kind of in that point, okay, if you're an investor in this, the reason why you first got into Zilliqa was because it was the very first sharding, blockchain, the very first, well, not very first, but let's say equally carbon neutral, carbon friendly, in
Right.
the sense. I'm kind of in a sense almost lost for words. It's a lot of information to get your head wrapped around, and then just decide, oh, you know what, I'm okay. Zilliqa now lets me buy a dome for $80,000. I'll buy that. That's fine with me.
Yeah,
I don't
what do
know.
you what's your return on investment? I think that's what it comes down to is if we're talking business, it's what's your
Genuinely,
return on
yeah,
investment?
that's just the
Um,
truth of it.
the play you're gonna make here, if you're gonna do that, if it is 40 to 80, right, anything in that ballpark,
Mm,
we're talking about corporations who want to have some type of marketing play, that this is a marketing expenditure for them. That again, and keep in mind that's a good thing. We may want to invest in those tokens, but that's a very different thing than what a lot of us are here or in any blockchain for initially. That's not mainstreaming. That's closed code. That's private and centralized, right? There's a lot of different things that I think the communication just needs to
yeah,
happen here. And I would urge anybody in the Zil core team that's still there and hears these types of messages or hears we're saying this second, third hand, we're not challenging you, right? We're not saying you have a dumb idea or a bad idea. It could be the absolute best thing that your blockchain has ever done. Leaving it to the point to where there are so many valid questions where it's again when it becomes a legitimate question of are you even going to keep running your core product anymore, that's kind of where that's kind of where you lose a lot of people. But
well,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, well, I was gonna say in that sense, kind of you mentioned how it's closed code, it's private, it's very much becoming a centralized organization, in my opinion, rather than how I guess most blockchains, not most, but a significant amount of blockchains are worked on and kind of decided on in a decentralized manner to an extent, right?
Right.
Community is a very big focus for a lot of blockchains to an extent. But what I'm trying to get at is basically, oh, sorry, okay. What it was is that basically, um, wow, I'm having a freeze in my head there. Sorry about that. Apologies for the situation there. But but
It's all good. I've been reading the chat, and as you
that's
formulate
I
that,
think
I'm
that's the
just
problem. What I'm doing, I'm reading the chat, and the next thing I
yeah,
know, like my thoughts goes away. But yeah, the point was is that essentially you do all this scenario where the blockchain is decentralized and everything else, or sorry, not decentralized, whatever. The code is private. Do you think they're doing that just to kind of protect their insider knowledge or their intellectual property? Is it they expect someone to fork their code and potentially, cause a competitor? Are they just trying to keep it all closed doors and they can then just launch this whole Metapolis and just wow the cryptoverse? I guess that's like in the sense of if you get what I mean, in the
yeah. No, I think I get what you
yeah.
mean because let me pull one of the messages up that didn't get posted as I put the chat bar up. It had been this Andy coming back and saying having a Zilliqa city makes me think other blockchains may be added later, and I absolutely agree.
Hmm.
But there, right therein lies the shift that we're having to interpret that could be clearly stated is if you're building a metaverse company, that's great. But is Zilliqa research what is Zilliqa research component? Is this like the DeFi play all over again, where ZilSwap, right, is going to be doing all the DeFi, where this third party is really doing all the metaverse, and we're building a city inside of their thing? The question becomes, what happens when other don't take this the wrong way, Zilliqa, but what happens when other better, stronger networks come in and build their city that have had forward progress in DeFi, that have had forward progress in NFTs, where we're still waiting on the launch of the official NFT, right? And that begs the questions of why did we get an NFT market or why are we getting one when there's no official wallet, right? And all these questions that aren't funning. They aren't funning. They're legitimate questions that come up. It does beg the question of why would somebody do business in Zilliqa City? It still comes down to what are your corporate partnerships? What are the domes that you have inside of there? And then it's just like saying, well, and here's where I'll come into the emerging technology thing. How emerging technology works is we look at it almost like a video game, like a tech tree,
Mhm.
right? And so you have X skill, Y skill, whatever. And so when we take e-commerce, when we take the web, when we take virtual and augmented reality, when we put all these together, the drive of humanity, as I've said over social media for about 2 weeks now, is to eliminate space. To eliminate space. When you create a 3D world, you have to have a compelling reason for that. And typically it's been storytelling, video
Yeah,
games, movies, right? And
escapism.
storytelling. Other than that, when we take a look at any virtual world, including the web is a virtual world. When we look at it, it's all about eliminating space. How can I get my message from here to the other side of the world as fast as possible with as low latency as possible, whatever the case may be? So if we take all of that concept and say, okay, there might be multiple blockchains in this metaverse, and Zilliqa has Metapolis, Zilliqa City, right? Then you're essentially looking at one part of a multiverse in which you simply have the e-commerce mechanism locked in, and you have the vendors priced out to where a storefront is this 40 to $80,000 that you're mentioning. All of this becomes speculation, though, because we don't have the information out to do that. But it leads us into this very large knot of what is Zilliqa Research doing in all of that? Where are these 50 people? Right? Like, what is going on? If a third party's building the thing, what's Zilliqa Research doing?
Well, yeah, I think you've hit the nail on on the head and everything else. It's just in the sense of everything that we've known, especially with the the research team. Naturally, in that point, okay, blockchain research. We look and we kind of compare other blockchains, see what other people are doing, what people are looking for, all type of different commercial aspects in that sense, and how we can make it even more decentralized. And I think there was a really great comment. How it said, Zilliqa was supposed to be decentralized. But now we just forget all of that, forget all the research that's been done to that, and we're shifting towards this kind of centralized, Metapolis spectrum, right? So with that, it's just a bit a little scratch in the noggin, just see what happens from there in that sense. I don't know what you think from that point.
Well, I think I just want to point out one more time that we are doing a soft launch of our live stream test that we're currently talking about determining Zilliqa's direction and how it's been made difficult because of the lack of corporate communication. The plan for this show long term is to air Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. Again, that's Wednesdays 1 p.m. Eastern. And I think we have a lot more to talk about than just Zilliqa, than even just crypto. There are a lot of crypto stories that are going on right now. Rodrigo, you and I were talking about Binance not wanting to comply with sanctions.
Yeah.
We've talked about a couple of things off air. We were talking about Strong and whether it's a good buy-in price right now. And as we get more episodes in, I think we'll become a little bit better at time management so that Rodrigo and I have been working on this for weeks, by the way, behind the scenes, so that we're not all on one topic for, what did we go last week, Rodrigo? I think we
About an
stretched
hour
it
and a
out to
half, was
2
it?
hours, an hour and a
Yeah,
half,
no,
2 hours.
I think the first time was about 2 hours, and then the second was about an hour and a half, because then we were finally a bit time conscious. So we're like, all right, whoa, we need to start practicing here. Just stick with an hour.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about the stuff that a lot of crypto people care about in terms of the Russian-Ukraine war and what that has to
Yeah.
do with crypto, with fiat, with home prices, with inflation. Of course, we're not just a Zilliqa show, not just even a crypto show, but a 21st century lifestyle show. And so for anybody who catches this at any point and says, I don't really care about Zilliqa that much, that's okay. Don't worry. This is a soft launch because I know that a lot of the people I talk to and that Rodrigo talks to,
Mm.
they do care about this topic. So we decided, what the hell? Let's make the test public this week. You notice we have no music, we have no bumper background, we don't have all of that type of stuff. So just in our last 5 minutes here, I wanted to make that clear. But Rodrigo, that left me unaware. What the hell were you asking me?
I'll be honest. Now with that tension, I've completely forgot about it. So I think it's it's I think it's worth it. If anything, we can talk about a bit of the last few minutes that we've got about most importantly the Binance sanctions. I think that's
Yeah, this is where people are gonna probably not like us anymore.
no, I agree, and I think that's where I think we should set the tone.
I do agree. So Binance
Yeah.
has essentially come out and said, "Hey, you know what? We're sorry. We're crypto. We're not going to comply with sanctions and freeze Russians, the accounts of regular Russians." And Rodrigo, you have a law background. I have a business background, and can be opinionated sometimes. Um, I think you and I agree on this one, don't we? What do we
Absolutely,
think
especially
Binance should do?
at least especially as a centralized exchange. They're a legal financial body in the sense of that they have to comply with international law of sanctions with
You
all
put that
types
so
of
much nicer. I was going to say, shut up, Binance, comply with the sanctions. You are a financial institution. Nobody wants to touch the smart chain. Nobody can't. Well, we've even talked about this privately, that if they were truly decentralized, that wouldn't even be a question.
precisely. Yeah.
But let's put that aside. The smart chain, they probably don't need to do jack, and they're probably, I'm guessing, within their legal rights. I don't know. But in terms of the centralized exchange, that's a financial account. When I use my crypto.com card, com card, or when I read a receipt the other day when I used it. It's like checking account. It's a financial account. I had to sign financial documents to get my Binance account. They
Well,
don't really have a
precisely.
choice in this manner. I don't think.
At least in the standpoint of centralized exchanges, absolutely not. I don't think
Yeah.
that's any type of water that they want to be testing. If anything, if it's going to be, simply, let's say, Russian bodies in that sense that are using their, I don't know, decentralized wallets, then that's to each to their own. I think at that point,
Yeah.
if there was to an extent where they somehow managed to freeze and stop these decentralized wallets, which I'm pretty sure they necessarily can't, unless in the centralized
Again, unless they're
standpoint.
centralized, right? Some type of backdoor or something
Yeah,
like
yeah, exactly. So I don't think they want to test that either in the decentralized space, because then that will just send crypto to haywire. Everything that's it's meant to be, to in terms of
that. Yeah.
obviously the
Well,
freedom and being.
some blockchains do have that ability. Zilliqa, for instance, has that ability to do it with their stable coins, like the Singapore dollar can be remotely burned. But again, getting off of keeping it perfectly clear
Yeah,
that I don't think the decentralized part of it, the self-custodial part, even if the capability is there, let's just leave that for now, right? You
yeah,
can maybe hunt individuals if you need to hunt individuals, but when we're talking about the Russian people, average folks who are in no way responsible for this war and probably don't even want it, the majority of them, it doesn't seem like they do. I get the argument of ethics and that it's punishing
yeah,
them. I get that. So are the other sanctions. But in this case, I do believe you're a centralized exchange. You're not excluded from this. I think you are legally obligated to freeze the accounts. Um, and I really think that if they don't, that's going to make it worse for a lot of us in crypto who are both in the centralized and decentralized sides of it, the custodial and self-custodial sides of it, that it's pretty clear it's not your keys, not your coin.
I
It's
think,
in a
well,
bank
exactly.
account.
Not your keys, not your wallet, and that's that. It's a
Yep.
centralized exchange, and that's why everyone always says to send it to your hot wallet, send it to your cold wallet, and go from there. From there, it's a self-custodial wallet. You are control of your own funds. So that's where I think, I guess we both, maybe we've just kind of like, poked at the
Made
bear in that
everybody else
sense.
mad. Everybody
Yeah.
hates us now. It's
Yeah,
like,
but
look,
like that's how it is. I think in the sense of, if in the centralized exchange, they have to do it. And it kind of surprised me that, the stance that Binance took publicly about it. I don't know if you've got the tweet with you. Obviously, it's a soft launch, so we might not have it with us, but it was quite surprising. And I can only imagine there might be some emergency bills, or per se. Maybe it doesn't exist legally. I'm pretty sure, if I'm aware, since it is a financial institute and it is trying to work on its way to be regulated by the FCAs, at least in the UK. They're going to have to abide
you have to
to.
comply.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So in
I,
that sense, I think it's game set and match. But with decentralized exchanges, I just don't see how. Obviously, ethically, I understand it, like you've mentioned, morally, etc. But just practically, how are they possibly going to be able to do that without
right.
having any type of other adverse effect?
My
There's the
alarm's
hour.
going off. Hey, but here's the thing. Everybody knows we do the production test. I actually have an alarm, and I was going to point at right after your comment there. I was going to say, I know it's 2 o'clock, but we still actually have about 45 seconds left. And so I'm going to put a couple things up on screen. Blockchain Andy been hanging out with us saying he bought strong at $70. I did it dip that far? I don't know. Really?
No,
No.
that he must have bought it quite
You bought
early.
it originally.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
okay.
that's around literally where I first got into it,
It
and
was
then
still in the 200s or something last time I saw a day or so ago. I have Coin Market Cap open on the side. I'll have to check it out. I thought about jumping in. I've just really got to get through taxes this year. Good old Uncle
yeah,
Sam paying me a visit. And then Andy over here saying, we have lots of Andys today. Andy Reeby saying, DXCAD, why is it take? Yeah, Andy, I don't have time for that, right? Like, there are a couple of reasons. I think the continuing diminishment of the rewards the lack of communication on what the reward cycle is going to be, right? The rewards were being slashed, and I think Ollie and team were doing a good job of trying to maintain and levelize things, but ultimately it got to the point to where there was such a high risk because you didn't know when the rewards were going to be slashed and by what point. But even still, that's just the beginning of it. So let's go ahead and end off that. I'm going to end the live stream. Rodrigo, I'll tell you bye in just a moment in the green room. Yeah, I'll end with this. Andy, again, I should have just sent you a link and said, come on, we're going to do that in the future, by the way, if you're up for it. You talked about it on your channel like over a year ago with Strong. So if you're looking for those tips, look, I already recommended that you go check out this video from Blockchain Andy that I'm not putting up on screen right now. Zilliqa removes founders. It explains a lot of what we were talking about today. Rodrigo, I'll see you in the green room. Everybody else, see you next time.
Absolutely. Take care, guys.